Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a recap of the Microsoft Surface event. So the Surface Pro X, this is Microsoft's answer to the iPad Pro in my opinion, priced at $999 starting price. That'll launch in November. That's the first item you're seeing here, LTE enabled. The next are their earbuds, priced at $250, 24-hour battery life. The next is the Surface Laptop 3, which hasn't gotten a complete redesign, but improvements just about all around, a 13 and 15-inch version, an AMD-driven 15-inch version, a lot of claims about that processor. Next is the Surface Pro 7, which has now gotten Type-C. All of these have quick charge, by the way, up to 80% in an hour. And then two new products, the Neo, which you see right here, is a dual-screen laptop, two 9-inch displays, and then the Duo, which is actually an Android phone with two 5.4-inch displays. So all interesting products, I would say all around. This is Microsoft's YouTube channel, for those of you that are wondering, their Surface channel. I'm going to go ahead and show you product-specific videos now, because this, in my opinion, is one of their most significant reveals in quite a while. Let's start off with the Surface Laptop. We'll go in chronological order in terms of what Microsoft actually launched. So a $999 price point for the 13-inch version, which is driven by an Intel processor. The trackpad has grown by 20%. You can see that right there. They have a new finish. You can basically get an aluminum colored finish, which is quite nice, sandstone. The other things that are important are really the fact that it is now fixable, something that you did not have with previous generations. So I would say that's fairly important. Type-C quick charging up to 80% in 1 hour. And then the 15-inch variant, which is going to start at $1199, has an AMD processor that Microsoft is claiming is the most powerful in the class of this laptop. So that's interesting. We'll see how it ends up benchmarking. I have no further information at this point. And just, this seems to feel a lot like Apple trying to have their own processors like they used to do back in the day, and they still do to this point. The graphics performance on this is also supposed to be improved, as you just saw. They have new microphones, which should complement all of the Surface products across the board for voice recognition, converting voice to text, all of that. And it just appears to be a solid improvement on what was already a very solid product. I mean, arguably one of the most, I would say, popular laptops in the Windows sphere. Let's move on to the next item. So the Surface Pro 7, bread and butter of their lineup, which I kind of feel like we now see that with the laptop, but here they've added the Type-C. They called this a complete redesign. I wouldn't say that at all. The processor, they're saying, as you can see, has GPU 2 times the performance of previous gen. The studio mics, the same ones you'll find on the laptop as well. In terms of what I really see here, it's the quick charge, again, 80% charge in 1 hour, improved battery life, improved processor performance, and also you can see the sync to phone. This is something that's going to be across the entire product lineup of all Surface products. So they're getting ready to make their entrance into the mobile world. And that's showcased by, of course, the actual mobile devices that they introduced that I already mentioned at the top of the video. Next thing I'm going to show you is I guess it'll be the Surface Neo. Now, the Surface Neo isn't going to be coming out until 2020. But it's still a very interesting concept, not like the Galaxy Fold. This is a clamshell, two 9-inch separate displays, and of course they have a smaller version, which is the Duo. I'll get to that soon. And they revealed this a year in advance, the Duo being more of the surprise, not the Neo that we're looking at here, which is Intel-driven, because this was expected. If you go back in time, 10 years ago, we already had dual-screen devices, but they hadn't been optimized by Microsoft. So Microsoft is putting this out a year in advance in terms of the news so that developers get on board, and the largest developer of software, being Microsoft, of course, can actually perfect this product. That's the goal. And while you might think this is a reveal that hurts them, that competition can jump ahead, considering they are the one developing Windows 10X, which is a new version of Windows specifically designed for the dual screen world that they're trying to introduce as their new class of product here with the Neo and the Duo in the smartphone realm, I think they've got the right idea and the right approach to this. The hardware was out there today. We saw it. You're seeing it now. I think it's going to change. How much? I'm not sure. There is a magnetic keyboard that can be attached to the screen. Of course, you have pen input, as you can see in the video. Content can slide seamlessly from one screen to another, or you can use the screens independently. There's that keyboard that I was mentioning. And I think this was a long time in the coming. It was just a matter of whether or not Microsoft would actually put their money where their mouth is. And I'm glad that they've done that. I'm glad that they've given us this year to know it's coming, because not only is this good for development, it's also good for consumers to know what's coming down the road, the line. Do you want to spend money on what's available now? Or do you think that this could potentially be your perfect device? And that's how I view what they've done with previewing the Neo and Duo at this event. And I think both of these products have a very good chance of being a success. The question really boils down to how the software will be executed. And I think, again, reiterating the fact that Microsoft is the largest software developer in the world is a great advantage to them. There's no question about that. Let's take a look at the Duo. Now, the Duo is essentially a smaller version of that. I'm assuming that will be built around a Snapdragon chipset rather than an Intel one, since it is a phone. Now, the Duo looks promising. I mean, two 5.4-inch displays. I'm not sure how well it's going, and this is what she's pulling out of her bag right now, because that was the Neo. Don't want to confuse anybody. Very cool. This is not a fold. This is not the Samsung Galaxy Fold. This is a clamshell device. I have to reiterate, they're not changing the game in terms of what they've put together. But if the software is executed correctly, then they will be changing the game, because something that is traditionally reserved for desktop experience, which is the multi-monitor experience, will now have on the go. And that is a big deal. I do think this is a step in the right direction. I do think Microsoft is right in calling this the next segment. And this is revolutionary in that respect. No question about it. And I'm so glad that they co-opt with Google, and this is an Android device in spite of buying Nokia for $7 billion bloated dollars and failing since they left the market in 2014. So I'm excited to see a Windows phone based around Android. In fact, again, if you are a subscriber, you know that I've said over the years that if Microsoft was smart, they would combine the best of both worlds in the Surface Pro realm. They've got the hardware. Why not get Google on board and make a complete product that would appeal to both the mobile and traditional computing segments? And that's what the Neo and Duo, at least in the smartphone realm with the Duo here, seem to appeal to. And I'm so glad they've done this. Again, even if we have to wait a year, I see this as a step very much in the right direction. Now, if I take a look, they should also have a video for the Pro X. I'm looking for it here. There should be one. Let me swipe that away. Not seeing it there, but I'm sure that I will. Here it is. Now, the Surface Pro X, as I mentioned, seems to be a clear competitor for the iPad Pro. And that's because, quite frankly, it's something that Microsoft hasn't addressed. Since the Surface Pro has been out, the iPad Pro has come and certainly generated a ton of sales. And I've always wondered, why would someone buy the iPad Pro when you could get a Surface Pro? And that's because, quite frankly, not just branding and Apple fanatics being at the line to pick one up, but there was nothing directly competing. And I think that's what Microsoft has done here with their 13-inch display, keyboard combo, the pen that actually has a place to be stored inside of the collapsing keyboard right there, which is very cool. Certainly not a game changer, but smart. They took notes from the competition and improved upon what exists. And if this does perform as they are stating it will, which is a very good question because they're claiming that it can outperform the Surface Pro 6, which has a real processor. This is driven by a Snapdragon chip that, again, is a custom chip that they've gotten for the Pro X in cooperating, really paying Qualcomm. then it'll be interesting. You just saw there, it can drive two 4K screens. This is a lot of horsepower for a mobile chip driven tablet. And that's exactly what Microsoft needs in order to compete with Apple. And for years now, as I said earlier in this video, even though Microsoft has had the Surface Pro line, and as I said, I didn't understand why people would put money into something like an iPad Pro when they could get a Surface Pro, they clearly understand that people don't want necessarily a full OS, and that's why they've introduced this. Now, they've done RT in the past, they've done mobile operating systems and flopped, and that's because they simply didn't do enough. And I think with the lineup today, what they did was round things out. They really made it so that you have options. I wish I had seen an update to the Surface Book. Hopefully we'll see one eventually. Microsoft on their website still does not allow any pre-ordering, but just to let you know exactly what we're looking at. With the Surface Pro 7, we're looking at, everything should be pre-orderable, the Surface Pro 7, as well as the Pro X will be something you can pre-order today, and of course, the laptop. But in terms of release dates, we're looking at October 22nd for the Surface Pro 7. We're looking at November 4th, I believe, for the Pro X. That starts at $1,000. The Surface Pro 7 will start at $749, but oddly enough, in a 4 gig RAM configuration, which I can't really wrap my head around. The Surface Pro X, just so you know, is a little bit lighter than the Surface Pro 7. So really, this is all about portability and, again, going head-to-head with Apple in the iPad Pro realm. That's why it even has a 13-inch screen. It's larger than the Surface Pro screen, which I wish we would have seen a Surface Pro with a 15-inch panel. I mean, that would have made my day. That, unfortunately, as we all know, didn't occur. When it comes to the Surface laptop, now we have something that is, again, repairable, which in the past you could not do a thing about. In fact, I think that was a response to the fact that it was completely unrepairable. So that's good that they've done that. But in the same vein, this custom AMD chip, we'll see once it actually makes landfall. And that's for the 15-inch variant, which starts at $1199, as I mentioned earlier, $1,000 for the 13-inch, and that's an Intel-based, and I'm assuming that we are starting at 8 gigs of RAM. I found it very hard to find any real information on these. In fact, at this time, which is still before 4 o'clock Eastern Standard in the US, there are no specs or purchasing options available on Microsoft's website. They just have coming soon for each of these products. Also, I forgot to mention, even though the Surface Pro 7 starts at $749 with that 4 gig configuration with the Intel 10th Gen chip, the Pro X starts at an 8 gig of RAM configuration. So a little bit odd, but it is at a higher starting price point. But again, with a Snapdragon chip that even if they promise us the farm, I can't really be certain that we're going to get it. I mean, yes, more battery life, pen performance should be fine. In terms of overall app performance and how things are going to operate in there, until we see it, we won't really know. Beyond that, the earbuds, they kind of just remind me of gauges that people like to stretch their earlobes and stick them in. The coolest feature with the earbuds, though, and I didn't show those, is that, outside of the initial video, is that they are capable, capable of actually translating 60 languages, which is not a new revolutionary idea. There have been many products on the market that have attempted this, so not unique in that regard, but the 24-hour battery life, the Office integration, the gesture integration that you're seeing now, these are all positive things that go in the right direction for what buds that are going to compete with what Samsung makes, what Apple makes. They're accomplishing that. And it's another space they're able to fill that they just did not have a foot in. We got headphones last year. Now we have earbuds that complete the entire audio realm. Again, I don't love the design, but I'm not too critical of it. This is not something that I'm likely going to purchase. but many of you may. Again, the fact that they look like gauges, you know, Apple's version looks like a hearing aid, Samsung's somewhere in between. These to me are overall generally a waste of money, but a lot of people swear by their respective smart earbuds. So it's really a matter of personal preference. I think it's smart that Microsoft introduced it because it just gives them another product in their lineup that they simply hadn't addressed until now. So the Duo and the Neo, I think, of course, are the most innovative, but not because they're a clamshell with two screens. As I said, we've seen that before. I covered the Libretto from Toshiba back in 2010, 2011, the 105, which was a clamshell with two screens. The problem was there was no software to support it. Forget that hardware was years, maybe hundreds of years in terms of contrast to today, and battery life also from what we can achieve today. And the fact that we'll be doing it with a mobile processor, something that is ARM-driven, much like the Surface Pro X, that bodes well for battery life, and overall performance, because right now, mobile products can do very well. Can they replace desktop computers? No. Now, I don't know what's going to be in the Neo. I imagine we're getting an ARM processor in the Duo. I wonder what will be in the Neo, if it's going to have similar Intel specs to the Surface Pro lineup, which will be the 8th generation, holiday of 2020 when they launch this. That's going to be very interesting. And that's what I really have my eyes set on. The Duo looks a little too big, frankly. I mean, when you think about the Galaxy Fold and that it's already in existence right here in my hands here in 2019, and yes, it's $2,000, but I mean, what do you think the price is going to be on the Duo or Neo? But again, I'm just glad. I'm not saying they listened to one of my reviews, but I've always said, why does Microsoft not partner already with Google to make that one killer device, that one Surface Pro where we have both worlds? And they're not doing quite that, but they're doing the closest thing to it with the Duo. The Neo, of course, it's all going to be Windows 10 X, but the Duo is going to be a Google cooperative. So developers will have time, and even though, again, this reveal is a year early and people are going to say that Microsoft has given up their plan because they're the one developing the OS, no one is going to beat them to market with this. They can't. It's not possible. They will be the first. Look, there are different manufacturers that already have dual screen devices, not just Samsung with the Galaxy Fold. You have the Asus Pro Duo that has a screen and a half almost. This is not new. The difference is Windows has not been optimized for this multi-monitor system in a single device. Now we will finally have that. And that's a really big deal. So for a change, I am excited about what Microsoft did today. The only reason it took so long to prepare this video for all of you is that really no details still exist. I mean, I've given you dates, October 22nd for the Surface Pro. We have November 4th for the Pro X, but, and the earbuds I really don't care about. But beyond that, I can't tell you what specs and in what flavors in terms of storage, options and pricing are really out there. I just have starting prices, which are kind of meaningless. But what I do clearly see here is a shift towards Apple's structure. Again, I mentioned this earlier, of getting proprietary chips, which I'm not a big fan of this. This isn't what I really like to see, because a lot of these comparisons today were not real world, in my opinion. They were more based on benchmarking they had done in-house with the hardware they had paid for to have exclusivity. So I don't have any doubt that the AMD chip that's going into the Surface Laptop 3 will be very good. They were smart to say best performance in its class, because they're saying it's 3 times more powerful than the MacBook Air, which isn't a very high bar. That's a piece of crap. But that's still a good thing to know. I mean, that's a real reference point. But since we're dealing with different operating systems, is it really? And the fact that we've got a proprietary chip from Qualcomm in the Pro X, they gave a lot of, again, synthetic benchmark numbers, which are fantastic, but I have no idea of what that means in the real world. The same applies to what foreseeably will be in the Neo or Duo clamshell devices in 2020. So all exciting stuff, but the proprietary chips, it just reminds me of Apple's old relationship with Motorola when they used to make their own processors. And then they finally caved and went to Intel because they realized industry standard is exactly that. So I see this as maybe a half step backwards. I won't call it a full step because they're still, Intel is still in there. But I am wondering where the Surface Book is. I'm wondering whether or not the Studio is not getting a refresh simply because it's not doing that well in its second generation, which I would believe because it's incredibly overpriced. Another cue from Apple. Beautiful hardware, but just a price tag from hell. And that's pretty much it. Hope you all enjoyed my recap. This wasn't a quick one. It was at length, in depth. And hopefully I'll be reviewing the majority of the items I discussed today. The Pro X and Surface Pro for sure. The laptop, I'm not so sure. I mean, again, the biggest benefit there is really the fact that now you can fix it. It has a bigger trackpad and new internals. The Surface Pro 7, on the other hand, I mean, I like that they all got quick charging. Welcome to 2 years ago, what it should have been. Beyond that, exciting stuff. First time I'm actually excited about a Surface event in quite a while. They've kind of been mundane and just taking steps because they have corporate business locked down. Here, they're finally taking a stab at the competition, including the mobile market next year, holiday 2020. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.